Welcome to the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, brought to you by the umbrella school, Start Academy. We empower and equip you to cultivate the authentic homeschool lifestyle where freedom and relationships rule.
We're going to dive into the core high school subjects, concepts, and curriculum that you might want to investigate more to see if it would work for your particular family. So starting with math. In high school in general, the concepts can go from Algebra 1 all the way up to calculus. So this can include Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, pre-calc, calc, trigonometry, as well as things like statistics, business math, or consumer math. This is all dependent on your students' abilities, your students' desires after college. And as we always say, start with the end in mind and have an idea where your student might want to go after high school. And if you know for sure they want to go to college, it would be a good idea to look at what that college requires for entrance, as well as not just entrance, but to be a well-qualified applicant.
If they're going to a college that might be needing SAT or ACT scores, CLT, then typically you want to make sure that your student has taken Algebra 1 and geometry first before they take those tests. And a lot of times people say to me, why don't we do Algebra 1, then Algebra 2, and then geometry? And one of the reasons behind that is because those tests are going to include some concepts from geometry. And so you want to be prepared for that. And then also geometry is going to have some algebraic concepts included that will really get stronger as they go through that course before they head into Algebra 2. But that does lead me to Saxon. Saxon Algebra, the third edition, is really great because they have Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and they've got geometries but integrated in those textbooks. So if your student does Algebra 1, Saxon version 3, then they are going to also have a half a credit of geometry that year. And then the next year, if they do Algebra 2, they're going to get another half credit of geometry. So it's like you're doing 3 classes in 2 years. So it's pretty nifty setup that they have there.
Then they can go on and do advanced math. And whether they do that over 1 year or 2 years, it be a benefit to your student, especially if they struggle with pre-calc and trig, to be able to take Saxon advanced math and divide that up over 2 years.
Yeah, and that's a good plan.
Especially if they've already taken the SAT or ACT. If you find that your student takes the, let's say, PSAT in 10th grade and their math scores are on the lower side, it might be because they've only had pre-algebra, Algebra 1, maybe geometry. So don't get discouraged if you need a particular test score, if the college that your student is looking at is really wanting a particular score for a scholarship. Generally, after Algebra 2, if the student retakes it in 10th, possibly, but usually 11th and 12th, their score will go up.
And Saxon really is the gold standard for many homeschoolers. It's not for everybody, though. If you do use it and your kids are struggling, you can consider using something like Nicole, the math lady, we've heard good things about, for extra support. But there are other similar programs, Bob Jones, Abeka, and Alpha Omega Horizons. They all have similar rigor, but so we lump those together.
And I know we've mentioned in our past curriculum podcast, The Life of Fred, because it's an alternative, and that is often more for your literary minded student who needs a story to go along with math. And so it's a non-traditional approach, but it's been very helpful for a lot of high school students, and it's even worked for college prep.
A couple other options are Consumer Math for Real Life by Not Consumed, The Art of Problem Solving, Mr. D Math, and always things like Khan Academy, especially for SAT prep. And this works really well if you're using teaching textbooks as your spine for math curriculum.
You can fill in any gaps there if you double check with the SAT prep. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Kathy Duffy. She does a lot of curriculum reviews. But for consumer math, she recommends Abeka's consumer math. I guess it's just called that. But she strongly suggests that you use their skills and review book alongside it to really get the full effect of that class.
And math is one of those subjects we highly recommend you find a curriculum for and not try to wing it, because there is something about teaching, the manner of teaching, to make sure you don't have the gaps. It's too easy when we try to make it up ourselves. So we do recommend finding a curriculum that works for your student. But that being said, language arts is one of those that you can pull together based upon the interests of your student in various ways. And so basic concepts we would address in language arts would be literary analysis, writing, speech, debate, and vocabulary, and always have them reading and reading some more.
Mm.
It's really the foundation of language arts, is being able to read, but then being able to write about what they have read as well.
And that's kind of your sweet spot, Michelle. So can you talk more about that?
Which aspect of it? I wanted to hear you say what your sister said before about the reading. You
Oh,
had
yeah,
such a good word on reading, and then I'm happy to jump in.
sure. My sister had a long career in teaching high school English and just recently retired. But when our boys first started junior high school, she gave me all sorts of advice. And part of it was just read. Really, there are three areas to focus on. One, of course, obviously, is reading for understanding and to improve your comprehension. And then she said something that really surprised me. She said, make sure that they're reading for personal pleasure, just for the sheer enjoyment of it. And part of that, of course, obviously, is because it feeds your spirit. But also, she said, then the third reason is because that will help them increase their reading stamina, because you want your kids to be able to read for longer periods at a time, especially if they're going to be headed toward college, because there's a lot of reading in college. And just even if you're not going into college, many careers. So longer periods at a time. So you want to improve the reading stamina and just for the joy of it. And of course, for understanding.
I've taken the approach that I tend to develop a English class for my kids based upon either what I see they're going to need to grapple with, because I think literature is a fabulous teaching tool in and of itself.
Mm.
But in that, using literary analysis, helping them to understand the plot, the characters, the setting, the rising action, the climax, the denouement, which is the falling action, and then, of course, the conclusion. But all the little things that go into understanding that literature with allusion. What is another author alluding to in some of their writing? Sometimes they mention a song, or they mention a place in history, or it people, different things like that. But allusion is a excellent tool because it's a way of encapsulating a lot of information in a small amount of space. Like if an author said, back in 2020, that's all they need to say. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, 2020, COVID, oh my gosh, mask, right? It covered so much emotional, mental, and physical things going on in just that one phrase. So illusion's a big thing. Metaphors, being able to understand them, what they're comparing and contrasting, being able to pick out foreshadowing, different things like that. They're excellent tools, excellent ways to teach, and things that have really helped me as the parent teaching the literature are a couple of websites. Look at study.com or litcharts.com or cliffnotes.com or sparknotes.com to draw out your students' engagement with the reading and maybe give them different questions that are going to try to dig deeper with the material.
We also taught our kids how to annotate a text. I had one kid that wanted all of his books to look perfect all of the time, as if he had never touched them, even though he loved to read. He just liked the look of a nice, clean book. I said, "No, I'll buy you another one. Don't worry about it. Just write. I want you to physically write in this book, underline this, highlight that, draw an arrow here, because it's such an important skill to learn again going forward toward college, but also just in life, paying attention as you're reading. I do it with devotional books now, whatever you happen to be reading. So we had to teach our kids that skill. And then literature in general too. There are a lot of lists of books out there, but you don't need to be tied to them any more than you need to be tied to any curriculum. You drive the bus, not the other way around. And so find what works. Like you were saying, Michelle, I think what works for your family, what you're choosing to teach this year, what matches up with your other studies, or what you just think is important for their spirit, and go with that. And that's okay.
Are you interested in doing a professional homeschool evaluation but feel uneasy about having someone look at your students' work? Do you have questions about the process and how everything comes together? Get our guide to stress-free homeschool evaluation techniques with our expert guidance. Don't miss out on this helpful information. Go to today's show notes for a copy of our ultimate guide to stress-free professional homeschool evaluations.
And a note on that annotating, I often tell my students that it's like you're having a conversation with the book. So go ahead and write. You can write what in the margin because you're like, is this going to be explained later? Or is this foreshadowing? Asking questions of the book and going back and realizing that, oh, okay, some of these questions did get answered, but use it as a conversation piece when you look at it. And some of my students, we say, have different colors for different topics, different ways they may, or different characters. Sometimes keep your own character list because there's plenty of authors who have numerous characters and you start to get lost on who's who. But with all of that, with your reading and your literary analysis, it's really easy to add writing projects into those, or speech, or even debate, because books, this is the beauty of literature, is it can bring up varying viewpoints, and you can use the literature as the starting ground to have deep discussions about controversial issues and debate both sides.
Mhm.
But the bad guy is the book, not each other. And that's just been to have that third party is very helpful. You can do creative writing. I've had students rewrite the ending of the book when they didn't like how it ended. So they would rewrite something like that. We would do also to prepare for the reading, and this can be another writing project, is a contextual analysis where you look into what was happening at the time the author would have been writing the book to get an idea of what influenced them, what things might they allude to in their writing, what things might the style reflect. Is it at a change of a time period from enlightenment to romantic, whatever, these various, the Gothic literature, whatever is happening, this helps give them an idea. And so that can even be a research paper they write. So you have creative writing, the research writing, and of course, persuasive writing, where you try to grab somebody to come to your side. I know there's other writings in there, aren't there?
Yeah,
Can't
and there
think
can be a
about.
lot of crossover too between subject areas.
The literature is also a great tool for vocabulary because when you're reading, they can make their own vocabulary lists and bring it to you and show you what they have had to look up in a book. Or you can preview the book and pick out the vocabulary that they should know before they do it.
Someone told me once that reading good literature is like going on a time travel, and then writing about it is their voyage of discovery.
I
And I
love it.
love the picture about how you can combine writing, reading, but also history, you can combine a lot of different things depending on the topic of the book, right? And so they get to go on this voyage.
I love that.
It sounds a lot more fun that way, right? When you get to go on a voyage of discovery versus here, honey, you get to write a 3-page paper on
Turtles.
But and how beautiful that they're writing about it as if it's their travel log into another world. Because really, a book is another world, right? Sometimes it's a window into the other world, or it's a door for what we could possibly have happen. So it can be a really beautiful thing.
And if we talk about reading the classics, that voyage, that journey is opening up their minds to a history that was there before them and will be there after them. And now they get to join in to that great history and that great discussion through the reading of the classics, the discussing of the classics, the writing. It opens up their minds in a way that I think is unique to reading.
I think we as adults often still have book clubs that we go to. I highly recommend a language arts, a literary club. Because, like you said, Stacy, discussing the books, joining in the great discussion of great books that will continue, hearing another person's perspective just broadens your mind in and of itself. But being able to interact with it together, knowing you're each reading the same thing at the same time is pretty neat. How would you guys incorporate grammar and certain mechanics in high school?
I think this is dependent on the student and their ability level and learning style as
Mhm.
well. There is one opinion that you don't focus on grammar and mechanics in high school, right? By high school, you've focused on that, you've taught them, and so now they're putting it into practice. There's another camp of thought that is you continue reinforcing, you can continue diagramming sentences, you can continue all of the mechanics all the way through. And then you can also add on vocabulary, studying for the SAT, what words have Latin roots, breaking down words. I think there's no particular right way or wrong way. I think it really depends on your family and your student and the way they learn. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, I completely agree. Some kids are ready. They know all this. They don't need to go over it again. They just need to get reading and writing. And that's perfectly fine. Other kids do need that daily review. And sometimes you want to actually use a little bit of a curriculum. The word roots, I guess we can skip into curriculum now. Word Roots by Critical Thinking Company, which we have mentioned before. That can be, you were talking about Latin or Greek word roots or prefixes, suffixes, things like that. That can be helpful even in high school, and you can do it a little along the way, 5-10 minutes a day. And the Daily Grams by Easy Grammar is another one of my favorites, 5 or 10 minutes a day. And I don't even know that I would do it every single day, but just once in a while, just to make sure that your kids are remembering just some of the little basic things. But again, not necessarily majoring on that by high school. It's just more of a support role to the bigger picture.
Or maybe filling in any gaps that you, as the teacher, sees now that they're in high school. If you really realize that, oh, they don't understand adjectives or adverbs or some certain thing, of course, focus on that.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Doesn't mean you have to do grammar every single day all the way through high school.
Well, and even I still recommend in high school, if they are struggling with that, make it a game. Don't make it rote memorization because they need a way that they can grapple with it in a fun way. And so that's where even with guests who came over, we played Mad Libs.
Yeah.
And even as the other adults around, we just all got into a fit of giggles laughing over Mad Libs because I'd had one of my middle schoolers do Mad Libs again and they thought, that's fun, let's try. So you can make it fun for them in those ways. Another curriculum that I've liked is Veritas Press. They do a combined literature and history curriculum, as of course does Beautiful Feet, our favorite. Stacy?
Got it.
Progeny Press also has some pretty terrific literature guides, and they have a really broad selection to choose from. And they look like they're these small workbooks, but oh my goodness, you guys, they put so much stuff in those guides. And I recommend actually not doing every single thing in those because you'll just die. But you go through it and you decide, okay, do I want my child to do the writing projects, or which writing projects, focus on the vocabulary or not, or which pieces of literary analysis to focus on. But they are great little guides. They are faith-based. However, it's one of those things where it's easy to pick and choose if that's not your vibe. So I really do like those. And then another one that we had great success with, also recommended by my sister, the English teacher, were these little books called Sentence Composing for High School by Don Kilgallen. Some of these books are a series, and some he co-wrote with his wife, Jenny. So Don and Jenny Kilgallen. And small books, they look like short lessons, but they really pack a lot in. And the method in madness is they'll take a sentence, sometimes one or two sentences by a famous author from a well-known work, and they'll say, here's a sentence. Look what the author did with it. They chunked it together this way. And now you write your sentence based on that example. And so you're really learning to write. It's kind of like the classical method of like copywork in a way, except you're making it your own. Small books that you can really get a lot out of.
Another good one for writing that people still use in high school is IEW. That's Institute for Excellence in Writing.
Andrew Pudawa, he's a pretty funny guy. I've heard him speak at conferences. Sharp guy. And he's really sensitive to struggling learners as well, which I appreciate.
And yet he's very challenging at the same time.
Yes.
So it can really be built upon the level of your student.
Another curriculum for classical educators is Classical Academic Press, and that offers a writing curriculum all the way through high school.
I've actually hit a lot in just covering math and language arts, and they're great subjects and can be a lot of fun. I know that's funny to say math is fun, but these levels with your high schoolers actually can be, as they're exploring how it impacts their real world and their life. And also to watch them growing in their confidence in the math, but also their perseverance. I think all my kids have complained about math, but it's because it's the hardest one. It requires the most mental effort in a lot of ways, as does reading a lot of times as well for different students. I think we're going to stop here and let you guys think on those topics, and we look forward to having you join us back again when we're going to talk about science and social studies, and we'll still get into elective classes as well. Thank you for listening to The Essence of Homeschooling. We're glad you're a part of our community.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all applicable links and additional resources. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you great content. Until next time, happy homeschooling.